30 days. That's how long we have before the Middle East reaches critical mass. Not speculation, not fear-mongering. Mathematics. Right now, 5 simultaneous crises are converging in a region holding 48% of global oil reserves, 3 nuclear-capable nations, and the power to trigger World War III. Iran, 5,000 protesters executed in 4 weeks. A US carrier strike group sailing toward their coast. Syria, government forces battling American-backed Kurds in Aleppo as we speak. Gaza, a ceasefire that's killed 400 people since it began. Saudi Arabia and UAE, allies for 70 years, now bombing each other's proxies in Yemen. Lebanon, Hezbollah, rebuilding 150,000 rockets while Israel watches. 5 separate fires. 1 massive explosion waiting to happen. I'm going to show you exactly how this detonates and why you have 30 days to prepare for what comes next. Because when this goes, when oil hits 200 per barrel, when your retirement account drops 50%, when gas costs $10, you'll remember this moment. The moment you learn the truth. Let's begin. The Iranian powder keg, February 1st, 2016, this morning. USS Abraham Lincoln carrier strike group entered the Middle East. 90,000 tons of American naval power. 75 fighter jets. Tomahawk cruise missiles aimed at targets already programmed into their guidance systems. Trump's message to Iran was simple. A massive armada is heading your way. But here's what makes this different from every other US-Iran standoff in the past 40 years. Iran is collapsing from within. Since late December, Iranian protesters have flooded the streets. Not hundreds, not thousands. Hundreds of thousands, demanding the end of the Islamic Republic. The regime's response? Apocalyptic violence. Over 5,000 people killed in the crackdown. 5,000 in 4 weeks. To put that in perspective, when Syria's revolution started in 2011, 300 deaths in the first month sparked international condemnation. Iran just killed 16 times that number, and the world barely noticed. Why? Because everyone's watching to see if Trump pulls the trigger. Trump renewed threats at Davos, but added something new. Iran does want to talk, and will talk. Here's the trap. Iran's supreme leader can't negotiate without looking weak to millions of protesters ready to overthrow him. Trump can't back down without looking weak to his base. So both sides escalate, slowly, deliberately, toward confrontation neither can afford, but neither can avoid. And Iran's rebuilding its nuclear sites right now. Satellite imagery confirms it. Which means Trump faces a choice in the next 30 days, strike before Iran goes nuclear, or let them cross the threshold. Either option leads to war. The Syrian tinderbox, while the world celebrates Assad's fall, Syria is burning again. January 6th, clashes erupted in Aleppo between Syria's new government and Kurdish forces. January 13th, full-scale offensive launched against Kurdish-controlled northeastern Syria. The Kurds control 25% of Syria, oil-rich territory, heavily armed by the United States to fight ISIS. And now Syria's new president, Ahmed al-Shara, wants the territory back. On January 30th, the Syrian Democratic Forces signed an integration agreement with Damascus. Sounds peaceful. It's anything but. Because integration means Kurdish militias surrender heavy weapons, Damascus appoints governors to Kurdish regions, and Kurdish autonomy disappears. The Kurds know what happens to disarmed minorities in the Middle East, so they're resisting. Artillery shelling struck Othman Hospital in Sheikh Maqsoud on January 8, killing 8 civilians. That's not counterterrorism, that's ethnic cleansing, and Turkey's pushing Syria to crush the Kurds completely because if Syrian Kurds get autonomy, Turkey's 15 million Kurds will demand the same. But here's the American problem. We built the SDF, armed them, trained them, promised them protection, and now? The US moved closer to Damascus but did not intervene militarily. Translation? We're abandoning our allies, again. So the Kurds have 2 choices, surrender and risk massacre, or fight and trigger Turkish invasion. Either way, northeastern Syria explodes in the next 30 days. The Gaza deception, they called it a ceasefire. They lied. Israel has killed 400 people since the ceasefire began. 400. This is what peace looks like in Gaza. Hamas returned all hostages except remain still buried in rubble. Israel occupies half of Gaza and continues attacking alleged terrorist targets at will. The plan was Phase 1, hostage exchange, Phase 2, Israeli withdrawal, Phase 3, reconstruction. We're stuck on Phase 1 forever because Netanyahu has zero incentive to leave. Israeli elections are due this year. If he withdraws before voting, his right-wing coalition collapses, he faces corruption trials, possible prison, so he stays and bombs and calls it security. Meanwhile, Israel blacklisted international aid organizations as of January 1st. Aid deliveries are still insufficient. Translation: winter, no food, no medicine, millions in tents. The UN estimates 15,000, 20,000, 20,000 Gazans will die from disease and starvation this winter even without active combat. But everyone's watching Gaza while missing the real danger, the West Bank. Settler violence reached highest levels in recent years, 5 incidents per day in 2025. Israeli security forces killed 38 Palestinians during large-scale operations. Extensive demolitions displaced tens of thousands. The West Bank is becoming Gaza 2.0, except there are 3 million Palestinians there watching what happened in Gaza. When the West Bank explodes, and it will Gaza's war will look like a warm-up. The Gulf betrayals Saudi Arabia and UAE, America's closest Middle East allies. Both buying billions in us weapons, both hosting us military bases, at war with each other. Saudi Arabia publicly accused UAE of undermining its national security and unprecedented public condemnation. Between January 24, Saudi-backed forces retook Hadramaut and Al-Mara from UAE-backed Southern Transitional Council. 7 waves of airstrikes. Saudi Arabia struck Al-Mukalla port on December 30. Saudi Arabia bombing UAE-backed forces. This isn't diplomacy. This is war. Why? Yemen controls Bab el-Mandeb Strait. 10% of global oil passes through there. For UAE, southern Yemen's strategic importance lies in location along key maritime trade routes and proximity to Horn of Africa, where Abu Dhabi built military and commercial interests. UAE is building an empire. Saudi Arabia sees encirclement threat. And here's the nightmare scenario. If this escalates, both could weaponize oil markets, block shipments, crash prices, or spike them depending on who wins. Your gas prices determined by a proxy war between supposed allies. Trump's trying to mediate. But under Crown Prince Mees, Saudi Arabia made economic transformation top priority, a shift shaping foreign policy calculations. Mees wants $2 trillion in foreign investment for NEOM, war kills investment. So when Trump needs Saudi Arabia to confront Iran, Mees might refuse, which means America's entire Middle East strategy collapses. The Hezbollah resurrection. Israel killed Hezbollah's leadership, decimated their command structure, declared victory. But here's what they won't tell you. Israel has killed more than 300 people in Lebanon since November's ceasefire. Why? Because Hezbollah is rebuilding fast. Iran lost proxies in Gaza, Syria, Yemen, but Lebanon, that's the crown jewel. Hezbollah remains organizationally intact despite leadership losses, and if Trump strikes Iran, Hezbollah is the insurance policy. 150,000 rockets aimed at Tel Aviv. Lebanon's Western-backed government broke long taboo and engaged Israel diplomatically. Political suicide. Because in Lebanon, the government doesn't control Hezbollah. Hezbollah tolerates the government. And the minute real concessions happen, Hezbollah overthrows them. So Israel watches Hezbollah rebuild and calculates. Strike now while they're weak, or wait until they're strong and unstoppable. Either choice triggers war. The convergence. Here's what Pentagon strategists understand. These aren't 5 separate crises. They're one crisis with 5 fronts. One spark. Anywhere. Total detonation. The math. 7 pathways to regional war exist right now. 1. Trump strikes Iran by Syria, Kurdish war, Turkey invades torn between NATO ally and partners. 4. Gaza, West Bank explosion, Tana, Jordan destabilizes Arab Israeli, war returns. 5. Saudi UAE direct confrontation, both appeal to us, intra-GC warfare. 6. Hezbollah provokes Israel heists Lebanon invasion. Syria intervenes multi-front war. 7. Iranian regime collapses Nuclear sites unsecured. Everyone intervenes in no total chaos each scenario. 5. 35% individual probability. Combined probability of at least one triggering in next 30 days. 78%. Not might happen. Statistically likely. The American gamble. Trump thinks he solved the Middle East. He hasn't. His Venezuela crisis monopolizes attention. His team can't manage 5 Middle East crises while invading Latin America, negotiating with Russia, and confronting China. Trump has extraordinary leverage over Netanyahu but chose to manage differences rather than exploit them. He won't force Israeli compromise because his evangelical base demands unconditional support, and Saudi Arabia, under Mees' economic transformation, Trump's confrontation. When Trump needs them to fight Iran, they might say no. So America's Middle East strategy depends on allies who won't cooperate, negotiations that can't succeed, and attention that's focused elsewhere. Something breaks. The 30-day timeline. Next 7 days, watch Iranian nuclear site reconstruction. Satellite imagery tells the story. Next 14 days, Syrian Kurdish integration deadline. Success or insurgency. Next 21 days, Israeli election polling. Netanyahu's survival determines Gaza strategy. Next 30 days, US carrier positioning. How close to Iran? 20 strike likelihood. February ends with either continued escalation without major war, 65% probability, limited regional conflict, short, and contained 25% probability, major regional war, thousands dead, oil crisis, 8% probability, complete regional transformation, decade-long consequences, 2% probability, the truth. 40% of global oil flows through Hormuz, 20% through Suez and Red Sea, One major war, both close. Oil hits $200,000 barrel. Global recession, your retirement cut in half. Gas $10. Supply chains paralyzed. This isn't abstract geopolitics. This is your money, your future, your world. And it happens in 30 days. 5 crises, 1 spark, everything changes. The fuses are lit. Nobody's putting out the fire. Middle East 2026, where peace kills 400, where allies bomb allies, where 5,000 protesters die in silence. Welcome to the 30-day countdown. The powder keg is primed, the clock is ticking, and we're all waiting to see which match ignites the explosion.